Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Hope everybody's had a great 2 weeks since we haven't seen you since the 1st of 2020. So this episode, I want to give you everything that you're going to need in order to be able to start your own debt-crushing goal. That doesn't make any sense. Basically, we're going to divide this episode into 2 parts. First part is going to be how to create a very strict budget, and the second part is going to be how to estimate your payoff date, so that you have an idea of how long your new frugal lifestyle is going to last. Because let's be honest, we don't want to have to live frugally for our entire lives. So we want to be able to have some fun with our money. And so we want to know, I think it makes things easier if you can have a finish line in sight, and it makes things easier to stick to.
Yeah, definitely. So we have 10 steps and we'll try to get through them a little bit quickly. Hopefully we'll help you out.
Sure. All right, so step 1 is you need to actually sit down and set some time aside to be able to create your budget. Okay, this is very important. If you try to do this without any time on your hands, then you're not going to be able to do it successfully.
Yeah, put it on your calendar, make the time. It might take a while, especially the first time that you're doing it.
Now, when I budget, I like to sit down on my computer, but you don't have to use a computer for this. You could just use pen and paper, sit down at a table, sit somewhere, wherever you want. Just have a seat. Get comfortable.
So step 1's easy. You're basically done.
Step 2, you're going to need to open up a budgeting app or an Excel spreadsheet. Okay? If you're doing this on pen and paper, that's fine too. Maybe just make some columns for yourself.
Yeah, maybe have it in its own notebook.
Yeah. We like to use Every Dollar, which is Dave Ramsey's company's program for budgeting. It's probably the best that I've used, but there are a lot of really good ones out there. And honestly, even just plain old Excel or a Google spreadsheet will do the trick.
Mm-hmm. All right. Step 3 is figure out your income after tax.
Yeah. And it needs to be after tax. You might know what your salary is or your hourly wage is or whatever it might be, but you know that's not at all what you take home at the end of the day. And so we need to make sure that we know what we're dealing with before we can ever make a plan. If you try to set a budget based on your before tax income, you're going to realize it's not really going to work out very well for you.
All right. Step number 4 is tithing.
Tithing.
So we are Christians, and so this is something that's really important to us. We set aside 10% at the very beginning of our budget. If you are not a Christian, we encourage you to set aside something like that for charities, because it's really great to see what kind of impact you can have with just a small amount of your take-home pay.
Mm-hmm. And it's really important to note, too, that even if you might be under a depressing amount of student loan debt, there's somebody out there somewhere that has it worse than you do. And so it's just a nice thing to always keep that in your mind, that even though you might not feel like it, you're pretty fortunate. So the 5th step to this plan, after you figured out your income, you now need to figure out your fixed expenses, okay? And so some examples of these might be your rent or your mortgage. They could be your student loan payments, because those oftentimes are not going to change, at least not often. And that might include things like your insurance, your groceries, things that you know that you need every single month that are not going to change drastically from one month to the next.
Step number 6 is your variable expenses. So this can be things like power, your water, phone bill, internet, TV. Things that might change month to month are your variable expenses.
Yeah, and you might have if you have a cable package that doesn't really change, you might be on a promotional price that'll eventually end after 12 months or something like that. You could add that to your fixed expenses. You could do the same thing with your phone bill if that always stays the same. Mary and I are actually on Google Fi, and we recommend it, by the way. It's really nice, but it changes every single month because it's a flex kind of plan, so you pay as you go. The more data you use, the more it's going to cost, and vice versa. So you could, in theory, some of those things could be in your fixed expense category.
Right? You'll know what's right for you.
Yeah. So number 7 is you're going to have to figure out your funds. And what I mean by funds are the types of things that you might have to pay for throughout the year, but it's not something that comes out regularly. A big one that comes to mind is your car repairs and maintenance. you don't take your car to the shop every month, or at least I hope you don't, because that means you might have a pretty bad car in your hands. But you need to be setting aside money for things like new tires or oil changes and stuff like that. And so those are the type of things where you might take a look at the last couple of years. If you've had a vehicle for the last couple of years, you might take a look and see exactly how much money you think you can live off with your vehicle. Some other ones, if you're a homeowner, it's a really good idea to set aside some home maintenance money. The recommendation is 1% per year, so of your home value. So if your home was worth $150,000, you'd set aside $1,500 every month, every year for that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Some other funds that we have personally are hobbies, our dog fund. This could also be a childcare fund. Taxes. We're getting our taxes done, so we like to set that aside so we don't just come April have to find $150 to pay somebody. And then also services that we use like Prime, Netflix, things like that.
Amazon Prime.
Yes,
Yeah.
Amazon Prime.
If you have an expense that comes up yearly, it's a really good idea to add this to your funds category, because it's better to set some money aside every single month than it is to try to scramble and get all that money put together at the very end. Contacts are another good one. Yeah. We used to have to buy contacts. We can now use our HSA for that, so it's not a big deal. But it used to be that all of a sudden now we have to pay $300, and it just kind of feels like it slaps you in the face out of nowhere. So set money aside. Take that amount, divide it by 12 for your monthly, pretend it's a monthly bill, and set that money aside and keep it in the bank. I promise. It'll make things a lot easier for you.
Step number 8 is a good one. That's your fun money. So in this category, we have pocket money for each of us, which we can just spend however we like. Restaurants money, entertainment. These are all in our fun category.
Yeah, and it's important to set aside this. This might be something where if you get too headstrong into paying off debt, you might say, I don't need a fun money category. Trust me, you do, okay? If you calculate out your payoff date later, you're going to find out exactly how long you're going to have to live this frugal lifestyle. And I think that living in this type of lifestyle is really similar to having a very strict diet. And if you don't allow yourself to eat some of the things that you enjoy from time to time, that diet is going to fail 99 times out of 100. So I highly, highly encourage you to set aside fun money. And if you're in a relationship, whether you're married or just dating or engaged, no matter what it is, pocket money, I cannot stress the importance of pocket money enough, okay? Because what's going to happen is the two of you are not going to agree on a purchase at some point in your relationship.
That never happens.
At some point, you're not going to agree on something. This gives each other permission to see kind of some leeway in that spending, okay? So every single month, Mary gets some money that she can spend whatever, she can buy whatever she wants with it, okay? It's a limited amount.
Yeah.
And it's the same for me. And that way, there are no arguments. You know, if she wants to get a new pair of shoes, or I did that one time before we started budgeting. I bought a new pair of shoes because I don't buy shoes very often, and it was kind of like, well,
do I get some shoes?
Do I get shoes? Yeah, and I was like, well, no, you've got a ton of shoes. So this will save you money fights a lot.
And like he said, it does kind of give you a little bit of leeway, even if it's just a very small amount every month. Kind of combining those 2 points. When we were really early on in our marriage, we weren't making very much money at all. And I was making a lot less than he was. And so I felt like we didn't have pocket money. And so I felt like I needed to ask permission, even if I wanted to buy myself something really small, like a candy bar or something. So it makes you feel not quite as stressed because you know that, oh, this is my pocket money. I can spend it. And then you also don't have to, again, have that fight or feel like you need to ask for permission.
And as far as the entertainment and restaurant money goes, if you set some other fun money aside, then you don't have to live like a hermit for 2, 3, 4, 10 years. You know what I mean? So it'll be worth it. Step 9 is you're going to take all of those all of your income after taxes and your expenses that you just calculated out in different categories. You're going to total both of those up, okay? After you've totaled those up, you need to subtract the expenses from the income, and that's going to give you an idea of how much extra money you can put towards debt every single month, okay? Now, if that amount is near or at zero or even in the negatives, okay, this is where step 10 comes into effect, which is
reassess.
Time to reassess what you just wrote down. Okay, so if there are any cuts that you can look back at and say, okay, do I really need to have $300 every month for restaurants? The answer is probably not. Okay, and so you need to take a look at what you're spending and try to bring some of that stuff down. Okay, there are other times you might take a look and say, oh dang, I have so much extra money to pay on debt. And then you take a look at your fund money and you're like, oh, well, that's because I gave myself $5 in pocket money this month. You might want to reassess that as well. Okay. Yeah. We want you to succeed, and the best way to do that is to be able to make a plan that you can stick to. Mm-hmm. So reassess that budget, make sure it's something you can do.
Yep. So those are your 10 steps. Good luck. Part 2 is finding out how long your payoff is going to take. I'm going to let Nick talk about most of this because he did this for us.
This is important. Once you have your strict budget in place, you need to have an idea of how long you're going to have to stick to that budget. Because as I said earlier, it's going to be a lot easier to make some sacrifices now if you have an idea of when you're going to cross that finish line. So for us, this is how I did ours. Now again, this is just an estimate, okay? This is not a you're guaranteed to pay off your loans at this certain date, okay? This is just kind of giving you an idea, give or take a month or two, okay? So you'll have at least a ballpark idea of where you're gonna be at, okay? So the first step is you need to get all of your loan information put together in the same place, okay? So you need to get the totals, whether they're private or government loans, you need to get all of those totals put together, and you're going to need the interest rates as well as the minimum monthly payments, okay? So start with all of that. You need all of it. And if you've got government loans, things like Stafford loans, those are reevaluated by the government every year, or at least they were when we were in school. It's possible that things have changed since, but every single one of our Stafford loans had different interest rates, okay? So make sure you have the interest rates of each individual loan because you get a new one every single year you're in college. So the next thing you're going to need is you're going to need to total all of that stuff up, okay? So you're going to need to total up all of your student loan debt, okay? So if you have 6 loans, I need you to take the total from every one of those 6 loans and total it up, okay? Like we said in the last episode, our student loan debt is around $125,000. That's not all in one loan, that's all of ours combined, okay? So you need to figure out what your total is. So then next, in order to figure out roughly, in order to use our debt calculator tools, we need to find out a weighted interest rate. So what you're gonna do then is basically take each individual loan and you're gonna divide it by the total amount of debt that you have, okay? So if you have a $1,000 loan, and your total debt is $20,000, it'd be 1,000 divided by 20,000. And that gives you your percentage of what that debt is to your total, okay? What you're gonna do after that with each one, multiply your interest rate for that loan by the percentage of its total debt. Are you still with me?
We'll show you an example.
It's a little tough. I'll show you exactly what we've been doing. Once you have done that for every single one of your loans, that's gonna give you a low interest percentage for each individual loan. Okay, you're gonna have to add all of those up. That is your total weighted interest rate, okay? So now you have a total of all of your student loans and you have a total weighted interest rate, okay? So the reason that you wanna get a weighted interest rate instead of just using a static rate is because you might have one loan, like in our case, our biggest loan has the highest interest rate. Our smaller loans have lower interest rates. And so if we were to try to just use the higher interest rate, that wouldn't quite make it work for our payoff. That would actually, if you put it into the payoff calculator, you'd find out that it would take longer than it actually would, okay? So make sure to get a weighted interest rate. Now that you've got your weighted interest rate and your total, you're gonna need all of your minimum debt payments as well as your payment that's left over from your strict budget, the money that was left over after all of your expenses are covered. You're going to have to add that together with your minimum payments, and that's going to give you a new monthly payment that you can put towards your debt. So if all of your minimum payments equal $500 and your budget allows for $1,500, you'd add those two together to have $2,000, and that's what you're going to put in the amount that you can pay every single month. So the next part is you're going to need to find a debt calculator, okay? There are a lot of these online. They give you an estimated payoff date. These make it much easier than trying to do something yourself because they factor in compound interest, okay? Compound interest is not exactly the easiest thing to figure out on your own, so if you find a debt calculator, it'll make things a lot easier. All right, so once you found a debt calculator that you like, I personally have used Credit Karma, you're gonna put in the total loan amount, that's probably gonna be at the very top. you're going to put in your weighted interest rate and then also your new monthly payment, okay? Once you click that calculate button, it should give you an idea of how many months it's going to take for you to pay off your debt. And again, this is just an estimate, all right? But it's going to give you at least something a little more accurate than if you had not done any math at all. The last part of this is if you get any additional pay. So if you earn commissions or things like this on top of your income. For me personally, I get coaching stipends for coaching high schoolers. So all of the money I get from coaching is now going into paying off our debt. And so the way that you need to factor this in is you need to figure out what that is roughly. If you don't have an exact idea, figure out what it is roughly and basically try to come up with that amount averaged over 12 months. Okay, so if you make $12,000 extra dollars, that'd be another $1,000 per month. And you would add that to the loan payment that you had just calculated based on your strict budget and the minimum monthly payments. Okay, so you need to add that in because again, that's going in every single month that you get an extra payment. That's going to skew the payoff date a little bit because when you pay in large chunks later versus paying small amounts earlier, it gives a chance for the compound interest to accrue daily. And so that's going to mess up the payoff date just a little bit. But again, this is just an estimate, okay? You don't have to figure out the exact date. We just want to have some light at the end of the tunnel. So that's everything you need to know in terms of figuring out a payoff date.
All right, so that's it. We hope that this is helpful, but we definitely know that's a lot of information to get all at one time. Hopefully our examples help to illustrate that. But if you have any questions, feel free to message us. You can send us an email. We have a Gmail account that's nickandmary@gmail.com. So feel free to let us know if you have questions, if you want to see more specific examples or have us just help you talk through it. We're happy to do that.
Feel free to leave comments.
Yeah.
We're always open to some feedback. So yeah, we'll see you guys in a couple weeks.
All right, thanks for watching.
Bye.
Bye.